Hi everyone, so I'm delighted to be joined by Stefan Palios today. Hi Stefan, how are you?
I'm doing all right, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good stuff. Really pleased to have you here. So first of all, can you just introduce yourself to the audience and tell them a little bit about what it is you do?
Absolutely. So, hi everybody. I'm Stefan. I currently live in Canada, in Toronto, although moving out east probably by the time this goes live. And I'm a freelance writer, so I work with growing companies on producing content and a little bit of strategy. And I also have a course for freelancers called the Freelance Sales Blueprint, which teaches you everything you need to know to learn sales and level up your business.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll come back to the sales blueprint because really interested to explore that further. So how long have you been freelancing for now?
Yeah, for about 5 years now, since 2016.
Right. So this is obviously first year freelancing. So if I can take you back to when you first started, can you tell me a little bit about how you got into freelancing? What was that like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a little bit of an accident. I tried to start a startup, which failed miserably. Just it was not good. But I did my own content marketing. So I wrote my own blogs on LinkedIn, and they survived the startup. And I had a couple people read them and say, "Hey, I actually like your writing. Are you a freelancer? Can I hire you?" And at the time, of course, failed startup. I needed some money, so I said, "Absolutely, I will do that." And that's how I got started. It was just I put out some of my own work for something else entirely, but it served as my very first work samples that got me my first paying gigs, and it's really just been that way ever since. In terms of the work I do for a client becomes the sample for the next client.
Amazing. And for some of those early new client or projects that you picked up, so how did they come about you in the first place to see the samples and where did they sort of come from?
Yeah, so it was two different things. So the first one was I actually tried to go through a startup accelerator for my startup that failed, and I
Right.
met an editor of a small media company in Canada who I actually still work with today called Beta Kit. They cover tech and innovation. And when I met them, they were doing some work with the accelerator. After the company failed, I was like, "Hey, if you need writers, let me know." And then, a few months later, they actually did. But the other way that I met my first clients was through meetups at the time. Meetup.com was exploding in Toronto in 2016 and 2017. You could go to a meetup every single day if you wanted to, and I did go to a lot of meetups. And as I started connecting with people, I was working full time, but I just started describing myself as a freelance writer. Where anytime anyone asked me who I was, like, "I'm Stefan, I'm a freelance writer." That's all I knew how to say. And it was funny because a few people were like, "Oh, that's nice," and kind of moved on with their life. But then a few people said, "Oh, well, what do you do?" And I had no idea what to respond because I would actually just write anything. And so I started responding with, "What do you have budget for?" And that was how I got a first couple clients. So it was very brute force. It was not very stylized or high quality, but it got the job done to get those first couple clients just until I got my footing to understand what it is I actually did.
Really interesting. This question comes up quite a lot actually around like if people start doing some projects while they're still full time in a role. So how did you know, or what kind of factors did you consider when making the decision to say, right, I'm going to leave my role and go full time with the freelancing side of it?
Yeah, so there were two moments where I was going to go full time and then I didn't the first time. So basically, a part of it was income, and I wanted to make sure that I was earning near my job income because I still had to, pay down a little bit of debt and just get out from under that failed startup hole. Um, but the other piece was a lot of gut feeling, honestly, and it was hard to explain. But basically, around the beginning of 2018, I was ready to go full time. I had matched my job income in a couple months from part time freelancing, which was really cool. And I had some good client prospects, and I thought that I could really make it happen. And then my biggest client uh, basically said, "We're ending your freelance contract, but if you would like to join us full time, we'll hire you." And it was a good job offer, good money. And I kind of was like, "Yeah, yeah, sure, fine, I'll do it." Um, I ended up there for just under a year, and unfortunately, was actually part of a massive layoff. They did two massive layoffs throughout 2018 and early 2019, and it was in the 2019 one, but it was a situation where I got laid off that morning, and then that afternoon, I actually closed a freelance client. So I was like, "Okay, this is a sign. I'm just going to deal with this." I didn't have a lot of money freelancing at that time because I had actually let the business fall because I had this full-time job again. But my gut was like, this is it. If you don't go full-time freelance now, you go get another job, you're never going to freelance properly. You're never going to start your own business again. You're just going to be stuck being an employee. I have a very dramatic internal monologue. But it got to that level where my gut said, you know what, you just closed a client. This will be enough for groceries for the month. And I got a little bit of severance when I got laid off. So I'm like, you know what, let's do it. So that was it. It was a combination of the gut and kind of a nudge from the universe. But then also I knew that I could get clients because I had gotten them in the past. So there was a bit more confidence and some money. You know, I'd earned money in the past. I knew that I could earn it again in the future.
Nice. I think that'll be really useful for people to hear that, because it's a question that comes up, as I say, quite a few times about when to take that leap, and interesting story you've had. So you mentioned obviously the prior time, bit of brute force, networking, etc., to win some clients. And then after you kind of established, what ongoing marketing activity did you continue to do for your freelance business?
Yeah, so pre-pandemic, I did go to events still, although far fewer. I went from doing 3 a week to like 3 a month maybe, and that was fine. It was lovely. I got to meet a couple more people, but the main things I did actually were starting to cultivate my inbound funnel. So I started caring about my Twitter a little bit more. I launched a blog with all of my own name, because so many of my clients were ghostwritten, so they didn't know that it was me. I reoriented how I asked for referrals. I used to ask for referrals by saying, you know, oh, hey, Jay, can you give me a referral? And I learned that's fundamentally asking for a favor. I'm asking you to find someone for me. So I rephrased it to say, hey, Jay, you know, if you know any startups that need content help, I'd be happy to help them. And so that way it became, you know, people like you, if you knew someone who needed help, I became a solution and not a favor. And that really, really helped to improve my referral business. And that started driving 75 to 80% of my revenue. And then I got better at asking more business strategic questions, because as a writer, I'm usually the last step, right? You've got your business strategy, your marketing strategy, your content strategy, and then you find me. So I started asking questions about those bigger strategies so that I could position myself as a bit more of a strategic advisor who also writes, instead of just the writer you call at the end. So with all my current clients, as well as in my new sales calls with potential clients, I would start asking like, well, where's the business going? What's the high level marketing goal? Where would my work fit into this goal? So that I could either know what I'm up against and scope a project properly, or in some cases, even be able to say, hey, look, you know, based on your goal, I actually think you need something different. Here's what I would recommend based on my experience, based on my knowledge, based on previous clients. And that has allowed me to land and expand with my clients. And it's something that I actually teach in my course, this idea of the minimum viable trial, where it's like, okay, what's the minimum amount that you have budget for and you know you need right now? Because if I do those well, then we're going to work together for a long time, because content can be a really big ongoing project. So it was those things. It was, I really got my referral engine. I started caring a bit more about social media, a little bit about content. And then I started going up the value chain and asking really business strategic questions. So I was seen not just as the freelancer at the tail end of the work, but someone that you actually wanted involved through the whole process.
Yeah. Very, very good. You referenced your course there, the Freelance Sales Blueprint. I'd like to explore that a little bit. Big area of kind of passion of mine as well is the sales side of things, and get asked a lot of questions on that. So first of all, can you just tell us a little bit of a background into how that course came about and what it includes?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, when I was thinking about launching a course, that it was something that I'd wanted to do for a little bit, but it never felt like the right time. And it started to feel like the right time in 2021, because I started to look back at my business and realize that, you know, when I was starting my business, I was maybe earning $300 to $500 a month, and sometimes a little bit more, and that was a huge win. But in late 2020 and early 2021, I was hitting $15,000, $16,000, all the way up to $20,000 a month as a freelancer. And I was like, okay, I'm doing something right. And in 2020, I wrote a book called The 50 Laws of Freelancing, which was based on consulting calls that I had done with other freelancers. And every time I gave someone advice that they came back to me and said, oh, this actually worked, I wrote that down. And so I ended up putting that in the book. And then I would get questions from people saying, oh, I liked the book, but I want to learn a little bit more. Can you help me? And I wasn't really interested in doing tons of one-on-one coaching. It just wasn't scalable for me. So I thought, okay, a course could potentially help this. And so what the course started as was the sales system that I used to take my business from about $300 a month to $20,000 a month. And that was just as services. So that's not including course revenues. I don't want to be that person. And what's included in that is not just how to run the sales call, but it's kind of the full stack. How do you get clients in your funnel? How do you make it really easy for them to say yes to booking a call with you? How do you run that call? How do you send proposals that are easy to say yes to? How do you deal with contracts? How do you deal with objections, red flags, and all of the procedural administrative stuff that you need to know kind of as an entrepreneur? Because as a freelancer, we inhabit three identities. We are an employee, day to day, we're serving our clients. We are an entrepreneur, we're growing our business, we're doing sales, but we're also an individual that has to be comfortable with those other two identities on a daily basis. So the Freelance Sales Blueprint is that whole skill set that you need. How do you find the clients, get them to your door, make it easy to say yes to working with you, and then get through all the admin stuff so you can start working and sending an invoice.
Fantastic. I've seen some great feedback from the course as well on your landing page and social media. So we'll link to it in the description if people want to check that out further. In terms of this video, could you just give some actionable sort of maybe even if it's sort of common mistakes you see with early stage freelancers in their sales process and a couple of tips they could take away to see hopefully improve that?
Absolutely. So the first one that I've seen a lot with early stage freelancers is trying to make yourself sound a bit bigger than you are instead of focusing on what you're good at. And I don't mean trying to make yourself sound like an agency. We're freelancers. We know that it's independent work, and that's fine. But the one thing I mean is, like, for example, a social media freelancer who says that they do, social media management for brands. But what they're really actually good at is setting up the accounts. They're really good at making sure all the accounts are consistent, that there's a guide for all the accounts. And then they are capable of doing the ongoing management, but maybe that's not their strong suit. And when you're just starting out, I always recommend to anchor with what you are good at and then delight with everything else that you are capable of. So sell yourself as a social media freelancer that sets up campaigns for brands, or that thing you're good at. And then in your sales conversations, you can delight them by saying, oh, by the way, I also can help you with ongoing management. I also can help you with XYZ. So that's the big one, because I've seen so many people fall apart when they say they're capable of doing everything, and they're not lying, but they aren't strong. So when you're just at the beginning, if you don't focus on what you're strong at, you're going to lose to everyone else who has more client experience and can send client samples and kind of outproof you, even though your capabilities are equal. So that's big one, number one. The second one is a bit more of a mindset thing. And it's realizing that a freelancer is not an employee who works alone. A freelancer is a business owner who works alone. So you own your business, whether you identify as an entrepreneur or not, fine, that's something just for you. I personally do, but you do have to realize that you are providing a service and a solution to your clients, whether you're the one doing it or not. So if you get into that mindset of, I own a business that's providing a service or a solution to another business, being your clients, then you can start to think about everything else that goes into that. How do you price based on outcomes, which is going to be more profitable for you? How do you sell based on outcomes, which feels so much less sleazy and is more about solving problems than trying to convince someone to give you their money? How can you optimize your own work? Because once you know how to deliver an outcome, how can you either deliver a better outcome in the same amount of time, or even a better outcome in less time, so that you get more profit? and then et cetera, et cetera. How do you go up the value chain? How do you do that? So you want to start with that mindset of, I'm here to provide a solution. What is that solution, or what is that outcome? And then you can build a business system around it. Because if all you do is think of yourself as a laborer, you can make a lot of money, but you will always have to justify. You'll always have to justify that your labor is worth more than someone else's labor, which is a really uncomfortable conversation to have for yourself. But then also, it's not fair to your talent versus, hey, business, hey, client, I can solve a problem for you, and here's what that costs to solve that problem. Well, then you can talk about the outcome and the scope of the problem, and life gets a lot easier for you as an individual.
Fantastic. Some really useful tips there for the audience, and totally agree with everything you've said. Outside of those things, are there any reflections, if you were to go back in your first year of freelancing, you would do things slightly differently?
Oh, God. Probably. I think the biggest one is I should have used tools a little bit faster. So I was afraid to use a meeting booking page. That was a big one. I always thought that the real personal service was me emailing back and forth with you to say, when are you available? You're going to deal with me. I'm not going to send you to a virtual assistant or some tacky meeting page. But what I realized is people want things to be easy. And so I was actually able to start charging higher rates when I started bringing in little pieces of technology, because the whole system just felt more professional. And I really didn't like the idea of just sending a Calendly link or sending a HubSpot page. So I would integrate it into my email and say, hey, if it's easier for you, here's my Calendly to book a meeting, or let me know when you're available and we'll figure something else out. Now, that alternative is actually a lot of work, so nobody really takes me up on that. Everyone just uses the Calendly. But I still get to demonstrate that I'm a human, and if you do want to interact with me on that level, I'm willing to work with you. I'm not going to force you to use a cold technology platform if you really, really don't want to. But I'm going to make it really easy for you to do that because it's better for both of us. So that kind of thing of like not being afraid of being professional. It's weird to say that, but when I first started, I thought that it had to be me 100% of the time. I thought that I had to do everything, that I had to be present all the time. And I was able to get out of that mindset by realizing I was providing a solution. And it was like a nice little ego punch. Like, my clients don't care about me. They care about solving their problems. They care about the outcome. And they like that I can provide that outcome. So my job is not to do all of the labor. It's to provide the outcome as efficiently as possible. So that was a big one in my first year. I would have definitely looked more to some simple time-saving tools. You don't need a big CRM system. Don't go buy Salesforce. But simple little things that are based on making it easy to work with you. That was the barometer that I now look back on, and the big barometer that I even teach in my course, because even successful freelancers making thousands of bucks a month, it's oddly hard to work with them sometimes.
Yeah. Massive. Just saying that, I could completely resonate, because I did exactly the same thing for the first few months of freelancing. And back and forth, the amount of email trails you'd have, but also, as you said, make it more difficult for the client, and the likelihood of them kind of ghosting or not going through with that meeting was increased. Whereas now, super automated system, it's still very professional and slick, and actually, that's not what matters. As you say, it's the outcome that they care about. So whatever can help get to there. So that's a really good one. And I think that goes for like templates and things as well, doesn't it? That, as long as you can still provide the valuable info. I remember I recreated every different report, in the first few months, and the amount of time.
I did the same thing. It's awful. And it's like, nope, just productize it, templatize it, save yourself time. You can customize them all, but give yourself a base.
Exactly.
You'll thank yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. So I totally second that one as a good little tip people can take, because the amount of time you'll save and be able to spend more time on, delivering for your clients, marketing, etc., is great. So, Stefan, thank you so much for joining me. We've packed a bundle of great info there in a short period of time. So, as I say, I'll link to your Twitter and your course in the description so people can take a look at that. And thanks again for joining me.
Amazing. Thanks for having me.